Podcast City Network.
What is up, all you beautiful people out there? This is episode 159 of the Nest Podcast. The Zach Billings is here, and I'm the People's Champ, Brandon Brewer. Zach, what's going on, my man?
Hey, just another day, another episode, and here we are, ready to do it.
That was a rough intro. I'm trying to change it up a little bit. I've said "What's up" and "Welcome" for the longest time. I'm trying new things. That one was a rough takeoff. So let's hope that we can have a smooth flight from here on out. Zach, today would have been Kobe Bryant's 43rd birthday. Of course, unless you've been living under a rock, you know that Kobe Bryant passed away early on in 2020 whenever his helicopter was an ill-fated flight. Crashed, killing him, his daughter, and several other people that were on board. It was the tragedy that kickstarted 2020. And, you know, today would have been his 43 years on Earth. And it's a shame that he was not around to see it. It's a shame that he was not around to be part of his NBA Hall of Fame induction and all that stuff. But what do you think of whenever you think of Kobe Bryant?
I think of just his insane run that he was able to go on with multiple different Laker teams. I mean, obviously, most famously probably is with Shaq. And then after that, he was able to just kind of take the reins on that team, and they built some pieces around him, and they did it again. He was absolutely top 5, top 3, maybe even Lakers ever.
Maybe NBA all time.
Yeah, I could absolutely see that. He was one of a kind for sure. And I like listening to stories of his or you know, any kind of tidbit that someone can talk about him. And he's just a one of a kind guy with his work ethic and all that stuff. You hear people say Mamba mentality, and it's unreal. I mean, that guy worked harder than most people that have ever lived, and people like that are rare for sure. And it was very sad to see him go the way he did. Like you said, you mentioned the Hall of Fame. We didn't get to have a Hall of Fame speech from him, and it sucks. You know, it really sucks when someone so prolific is gone too soon.
Well, yeah, I agree wholeheartedly, and it does suck. And one thing that you touched on in there is the Mamba mentality, and we called this episode Mamba Monday in honor of Kobe and that slogan and that lifestyle that he embraced. And I wanted to kind of look at some of the guys in Major League Baseball today that embrace that Mamba mentality and that striving for greatness. Of course, this past week, we had Miguel Cabrera, affectionately known as Miggy, who joined the prestigious 500 home run club. He's the 28th member of that club. So 28 people in the entire history of Major League Baseball have climbed that mountain. I'm not 100%, but I'm willing to bet that all of them are in the Hall of Fame, except maybe Barry Bonds. He might be the only exception. Well, no, that's not true either, because there's also A-Rod. Never mind. So they're not all in the Hall of Fame, but
everybody but the steroid people.
Yeah. Everybody that wasn't caught cheating. But he's also the last man to hit for the Triple Crown. He's multiple-time Silver Slugger, multiple-time All-Star, and multiple-time batting champ. So this dude's done it all. He's not just a big power hitter. He's also out there hitting for average, and probably one of the best right-handed hitters in the game's history. So that's a guy that I could see as someone that would embrace that kind of mentality that Kobe Bryant always talked about. You know, we use one of Kobe's quotes before our episodes of Champ to Champ, where he says, if you want to win, come play with me. If you want second place, go somewhere else. And I love that quote, and I love that we've been able to kind of borrow that from Kobe and plug that in on our shows. What did you think about Miggy hitting 500?
I think that was awesome. He's a very, very good player. A lot of people kind of forget about him because of all the bright young stars in the MLB, but yeah, he's definitely a legend for sure. First ballot Hall of Famer, no doubt. And I think if he would have been able to be on a better team, he probably would have had a bigger spotlight, probably would have went to the World Series a couple times. But I mean, he decided to make Detroit his home, and they paid him. So, I mean, that's his decision to make. So he still has all of those personal accolades, and they're pretty big, like you just named off. It's probably going to be a little while before we see someone else hit 500 homers. Just off the top of my head, I'd probably have to guess that maybe the next person would be Mike Trout. A lot of people are saying Stanton. I don't think he's ever going to be healthy enough to hit that many.
I mean, same can be said about Mike Trout. Seems like that dude's been injured every season as well.
It's a very good point. Yeah, so it might be quite a while before we see someone hit that many homers. So yeah, this is pretty special.
Yep, absolutely. And you know, it couldn't happen to a nicer guy. He is actually a World Series champ, Zach. He won a World Series his rookie season, I believe it was, with the then Miami Marlins.
Oh, okay.
And they made it to the World Series when he was in Detroit, but they lost.
Gotcha.
That was back when they had Scherzer and Verlander and Rick Porcello.
Oh,
and, right. Anibal Sanchez. They had a insane pitching staff that year. Another guy that kind of embraces that Mamba mentality that's wreaking havoc on Major League Baseball this year is Shohei Ohtani. This dude is out there delivering every single night. And in that same series where Miggy hit his 500th bomb, Shohei hit his 40th home run of the season. He also, in that same series, pitched into the 8th inning of a game and hit his 25th double on the season. So he's doing things that we haven't seen ever in the game. And that's a guy that, you know, wakes up and embraces the excellence that he has and strives to be even better than the day before. That's a guy that I think Kobe Bryant would look at and say he has the Mamba mentality. What do you think about the performance that Shohei has been putting on this season?
I 100% agree. And especially because Shohei is an LA player, I think Kobe would have picked up on that, and he would have tweeted, he would have done something about Shohei and nodded to his success. That kid is absolutely unreal. He's put to bed any concerns that I had this year. You know, obviously he came off of a Tommy John surgery, and it was questionable whether or not he could do both. At least for this year, there is no question. I mean, to hit that many homers and to pitch as well as he's doing. I mean, it's not like he's some average pitcher and average hitter, which in and of itself, if you could do both of those, that would be pretty spectacular. But no, he's taken it a step further. He's hitting phenomenally and pitching pretty damn well.
The name Babe Ruth gets thrown around quite a bit in conversations about Shohei Ohtani, but Shohei is doing something that Babe never did. Yeah, Babe Ruth had a great pitching career, and he also had a great hitting career. He rarely did both in the same seasons. Most of his pitching accolades came early on in his career when he was pitching for the Red Sox. It wasn't until he became a New York Yankee that he really got known as being a huge slugger. So right. a lot of people that don't really pay attention to baseball, don't really understand, they might miss that one a little bit, but it is what it is.
Right.
From the Mamba Monday mentions to one organization that definitely does not embrace the Mamba mentality. In fact, they're actively doing everything they can to take personality out of the game and even go as far as to fine players for having a personality is, of course, the No Fun League. The NFL is striking again with fining and penalizing players for taunting. And these taunts can be something as simple as standing up and flexing after you drag 8 people for a first down. In a sport where it's mano-a-mano most of the time, someone inevitably is going to get the best out of somebody else, right? So whenever you're going at it and there's so much physicality, it's human nature to have some energy behind your celebration. If the NFL is going to be fining people and penalizing teams that are celebrating big plays, then this season is going to be very boring.
It's such a strange move. I mean, you see the success that MLB has had in allowing its players to kind of showboat a little bit with the bat flips and all that stuff. People love that stuff. It gives a personality to the game. NFL is notorious for that kind of stuff, and the specific little things that players do, like jumping into the crowd at a Packers game, the little dunk they do on a field goal. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff that people just know right off the bat whenever they think of NFL. That's not taunting. That's maybe celebrating. But I mean, what are you supposed to do after, like you said, after you drag 8 full grown best in the world football players and you do your job? I mean, that's a huge accomplishment you just made. Why not celebrate that moment? It makes it all the more exciting. I maybe understand where they have some issue with, face to face type stuff that could lead to a fight or whatever. But if you're just celebrating the fact that you just accomplished something on the football field, there's nothing wrong with that.
No, like you said, I get it. If that hit that happened on Justin Fields, where it was kind of like that helmet to helmet, and his helmet went flying 10 yards back or whatever. If it's a hit like that, or like NFL blitz, where you grab them and throw them 20 yards behind the line of scrimmage, and then you run up and start teabagging them. Yeah, okay, that's a bit excessive. I don't need to see all that. But you mentioned people getting in fights. It seems like fans are even getting so aggravated over a lot of these dumb calls that keep happening, that fights are breaking out all over the stadium. Maybe it's got a little bit to do with, hey, last year we were all pent up in our house. We've been dealing with kids and homeschool. We've been dealing with, our wives and all that stuff being on our nerves every time we try to watch a game or whatever it is that's going on. And then you get out in public, somebody has one too many brewskis, and then all of a sudden, you've got fists flying. Did you see this most recent fight that went viral from the Pittsburgh Steelers preseason game, where the woman slapped the guy, and then the guy proceeded to knock her boyfriend, husband, whatever he is, knock him clean out?
Absolutely.
Wow. That one was electric. And I love the fact that the people that were filming it were like, she started it. She slapped him first. Kick her out. Let the guy stay.
Yeah, that was perfect. I think this is a little bit of both of two different things happening. I think you're 100% on the mark with people are pent up. People don't have any outlet. There's nothing to do. Finally, they can go back to sports. Finally, they can have some beers and have a good time. And when you've got, issues like that going on, and someone maybe makes a comment, and obviously they're probably opposing fans, or even some people fight their own fans, this kind of stuff is going to happen, along with everyone's got a camera. Everyone posts, random stuff online, and this is how this kind of stuff spreads. It's almost become like a thing to film a fight at a football game, and then you see it go viral. Yeah. It's two of those things combining, I think. I mean, everyone's kind of trying to go viral in some way with these kind of things. I don't know if they just post them for the laugh factor, or if they actually do want to, go viral with it or whatever. But either way, those two combinations are never good. And you're probably going to see this for at least this whole year.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree with that at all. And speaking of going viral, to all of our listeners out there, please go ahead and hit that share button so that you can help this show go viral on whatever platform it is that you're watching. We appreciate that, and we appreciate all of you for tuning in tonight. Zach, we need to get into some of our NFL previews, because we are, 2 weeks away from real football, from actual games that matter. So let's go ahead and kick that off with the NFC this week, because, of course, that's where the defending champion Tampa Bay Buccaneers reside, is there in the NFC South. And no team has gone back-to-back since the Tom Brady-led New England Patriots did it a few years back. Do you think Tom can recreate history and do it again with his new team down in Tampa?
I think he can. I think will he is the better question. I think it shocked a lot of people just how successful they were last year. I don't really see much changing this year other than Tom got another year older, but that doesn't really seem to affect a whole lot. But I do think that there's always a risk of him getting injured. And I think one injury would probably knock him out for the majority of a season, maybe a whole season, depending on the injury. And that might be the coffin in his NFL, the last nail in his NFL coffin, if you will. Barring any of that, if he can stay completely healthy through the whole year and most of his offensive weapons can stay healthy, he could easily go back to at least the NFC Championship and maybe face the Packers again. They're absolutely going to win the NFC South, in my opinion, especially because of Drew Brees being retired. He doesn't have a whole lot of competition in that division. And then it just comes down to, honestly, I think health is really going to be the big question there. We know that Tom Brady knows what he's doing. His offense is pretty damn good. Can everyone kind of click? Can everyone still stay healthy this year? Can it all happen once again? There's definitely a possibility there for that to happen.
Yeah, you hit on some important things there. One is the health, and Tom Brady has done a phenomenal job in his career of staying relatively healthy, but he's also the type of guy that has played through injury.
Oh yeah.
I know when he was with the Pats, there was a time whenever he cut his throwing hand and had to have it stitched up and bandaged up, and he still went out there and played and still led the Patriots to the Super Bowl. With the Bucks last season, he was playing on a torn MCL, had surgery in the offseason. Now he says he feels better than ever. So this is a guy that he is fighting Father Time himself, and it's been truly remarkable to see. No matter how you feel about the New England Patriots or about Tom Brady or about now the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, you got to respect the man's game.
Absolutely. I mean, it's next level. There's not a person out there that has done anything like this.
And he's continuing to do it.
I know it's crazy. And you bring up a great point with the whole MCL thing. You'd think a guy like him would have a tough time with that, but I think he's figured out what his niche is, and he's mastered it. I mean, he is a pocket passer, true and true, and he did something to where he could fight through it, and he did it absolutely well last year.
Yeah. And the Bucks are returning the majority of their team from that Super Bowl season. And they've also added Giovanni Bernard, who played with the Bengals last year. And he'll, I guess, split time in that backfield with Ronald Jones and Leonard Fournette. So in adding a veteran piece like Bernard, who at most teams he would be at least the number 2, they've added even more depth to their running back room. They've got playmakers that can catch the ball out of the backfield. They can rush up the middle. They can rush to the outsides. So they're a very dynamic team with their run game. Oh yeah, by the way, they also have some of the best wide receivers out there. Like whenever your third wide receiver is Antonio Brown and then your fourth is Rob Gronkowski at tight end, you've got a pretty dynamic offense. But yeah, I agree. I think the Bucks win the NFC South, and it's not even really that close.
No.
The Saints, they have too many question marks up and down their roster. At the head of it, who's going to be their quarterback, Jameis Winston or Taysom Hill? We'll find out a little bit tonight because they do play Monday Night Football, and I believe it was announced that Jameis Winston's going to be the starter this week, so we'll kind of see what he has. And it seems like Taysom Hill doesn't even want to be there unless he's the QB1. He kind of wants to be out on his own if that's the case. Whereas Sean Payton might want to save him for some of those gadget plays that he likes to run. And then, who's going to be the wide receiver one in Michael Thomas's absence? Who's going to really step up and fill that role for the team? So there are just way too many question marks, especially early on for that team. The Falcons, they're going to be adjusting to life without Julio Jones, adjusting to the Calvin Ridley, Kyle Pitts saga or the duo that will become out of that. We'll see what happens. I'm really high on Kyle Pitts. I know you're really high on Calvin Ridley. Do you think that they're going to be that formidable of an offense, or do you think that that's just going to be something that, doesn't really materialize into anything special this year?
I don't have any faith in that organization as a whole. The decision makers, I think, year after year make some bad decisions. So whether or not Calvin Ridley and Kyle Pitts are good, I have no idea what kind of plays are going to be called. You know what I mean? At the end of the day, it's all about how you utilize those players. And I do think that Calvin Ridley is good, but I have some questions how good he'll be in that wide receiver one spot when he's the one getting double teamed possibly instead of Julio Jones.
Yeah, we talked about that a little bit on Champ to Champ when we were discussing wide receivers, how he's going to react to being the guy that's double teamed and takes the majority of the defensive's attention.
Yeah.
So it will be interesting. And then the Panthers, I think they have just really no shot. Even with a healthy CMC, they've got Sam Darnold as their quarterback now, and that's, maybe he'll have a little bit of a resurgence, but from what I saw out of him when he was playing with the New York Jets, I was not impressed. Neither were the Jets, apparently, because they quickly moved on from him. This is a dude that was a first-round draft pick a couple years ago, so they don't really see him as the future in New York. Time will tell if he's going to be the future in Carolina, I guess, but they don't really impress me down there.
No, absolutely not. And CMC is going to be their main star, and we've said before, can he fight off all these defenses that basically know stop CMC, you stop their offense? I mean, that's really all there is to it. I don't think Sam Darnold's going to have some crazy resurgence. He might do okay. It might be nice for him to have such a great running back behind him to kind of take a little bit of the pressure off, but I wouldn't expect a whole lot from this team either.
I agree. In the NFC North, the Green Bay Packers are the defending North champions. They represented the NFC in the NFC title game against the Bucs and fell just short. How do you think that the Packers are going to do in this, what could be Aaron Rodgers' last run in Green Bay?
I think they're going to do pretty well. I definitely don't think that Aaron Rodgers is going to put up MVP numbers again. That was kind of wild to see.
So no 50 touchdown season from Aaron Rodgers.
That'd be really crazy for him to do.
Even with Randall Cobb,
he could get close. Maybe 40, 35. I mean, that'd still be a pretty damn good year.
I think if he has 35 touchdowns, that's a phenomenal year for him.
Yeah,
this year.
Absolutely. It's going to be kind of weird because we all know their dirty laundry now. Basically, we know obviously he's not happy. He's extensively said that he wants to be, a little bit more involved in the team, and they don't really care. They're not listening to him. So it's going to be interesting. Is he going to kind of check out this year? We don't really know. I don't think so. I think he's still playing for at least himself. They definitely have some good players. So it's basically them and Vikings are going to fight it out, in my opinion. And they definitely have a good shot. But I mean, if the Vikings can get clicking, they have a very good team too. Obviously, the Packers have the much better quarterback, but we'll just see. I mean, can it all gel again? Have people figured out, okay, shut down Devontae Adams, and maybe that's the answer. I don't know, but it would be very, very wild to see them replicate their huge success that was last year. Even though they didn't make the NFL or the Super Bowl, that was an amazing year for him for sure.
Yeah, and I do still think that the Packers are the team to beat there in Green Bay. I think they do have the best lineup, top to bottom, in the entire division. So chances are they will be a playoff team once again. They will represent the NFC North. But I think their biggest loss in the offseason wasn't the drama that was surrounding Aaron Rodgers and then Devontae Adams. It was the loss of Jamal Williams. He was the running back that filled in for Aaron Jones when Jones was injured, when Jones needed a break during the game. They always plugged in Jamal Williams. So it's going to be interesting to me to see how A.J. Dillon lives up to being the RB2. He was the guy that was kind of plugged in as the RB3 last year, got a few touches, wasn't all that impressive. Now he's got a much bigger role that he has to try to fulfill. And I think that's where, if anywhere, the Packers are going to show major weakness is in their depth at some of these skill positions.
Yeah, I could definitely see that as well. Especially with an injury. I mean, if one of these stars on this team goes down with an injury, how are they going to bounce back? Because it's basically a handful of guys on that starting lineup, and then after that, it's people that we don't really know. So that's definitely a good question.
Yeah. And, going elsewhere around the NFC North, the Bears, they're trying to move on from terrible quarterback choice after terrible quarterback choice and hope that they can actually have the guy this year in Justin Fields. Whether he starts week 1 or not, that remains to be seen. I think it's more likely that he'll be the week 3 or 4 starter. I think give him a couple weeks to kind of get the new season jitters and all that stuff out of the way. And then whenever, Dalton starts to suck a little bit, then they can bring the kid in to the cheers of the Bears fans from all over. You mentioned the Vikings. I have questions about if Justin Jefferson can continue his meteoric rise to superstardom. Last year he set all the rookie records, basically overshadowing everything that Randy Moss had ever done. And that's a guy that if you can eclipse any of his records, you're doing something right. And Justin Jefferson set the world on fire last year. Now moving into this season where he's going to be looked at as the true wide receiver 1 of that team, it's going to be interesting to see if he can keep up that pace. I look for Adam Thielen to have a much better season than he's had in years past. I look for Thielen to be able to step up in a similar fashion to the way that he did when Stephon Diggs was there in Minnesota. So I do think that the Vikings could be a force to be reckoned with. They also have some guy by the name of Dalvin Cook. Don't know if you've heard of him, but he's a pretty good running back, and he's projected to be one of the top 3 overall picks in fantasy every league out there. So he's a guy that you might want to keep your eye on going forward. And, then you've got the Lions. Yeah, they've got a new coach in Dan Campbell, and they're trying to change that whole outlook there in that organization. But stop me if you've heard this before. This isn't the first time they've had a new coach come in and promise the world is going to be changing,
Yeah, that's a disaster team. I mean, I feel bad for Detroit sports fans. They have honestly nothing to look forward to. It sucks.
Sorry, Mateer.
And I don't think this season is going to be any different for the Lions. It's just going to be a wash. I mean, Jared Goff is definitely a step down from Matt Stafford. So weird that they took that trade. Did they get some picks along with that trade?
I think they got some picks and maybe some money along the way or something. They got the extras in that trade. It wasn't just a straight up 1-for-1 swap.
That's probably the GM trying to appease to the new coach and saying, "Hey, you've got a new team. We'll give you whatever. You don't have to, mess with our hand-me-downs or mess with our old players or whatever. Here's some new little stuff to play with and see what you can do with it." But I wouldn't expect a whole lot. I mean, it's just not going to happen there.
I don't think so either. It does suck to be a Lions fan, I'm sure. The NFC West. Now, this is a division, if I had to pick any NFC division to be the best, it would be the NFC West.
Yeah.
They've got 4 teams in this division that could win at the season's end. Of course, the 49ers, the Cardinals, the Rams, and the Seahawks. And you talked about the Stafford and Goff trade briefly whenever we were talking about the Lions. I think the Rams have upgraded the most in the offseason with that Stafford trade, because not only does Stafford come in and you've got a brand new quarterback who is one of the premier quarterbacks in the league, in my opinion, who has just been hidden because he's been on a bad team for so long. It's kind of like if you took Phillip Rivers whenever he was in his prime from the Chargers and plugged him into Indianapolis whenever he was in his prime before Andrew Luck. If you plugged him into New Orleans instead of Drew Brees, that's the type of guy that you would be getting. I think the same is true about Matt Stafford going in there to the Rams. They've got Robert Woods and Cooper Kupp at wide receiver that are going to benefit greatly from that. I think both of them are going to have huge years. I think Higbee, their tight end, is going to be great. And I know a lot of people are like, well, they did lose Akers in the offseason. He tore his Achilles. They're not going to be able to run the ball. By week 2 or 3, I look for Darrell Henderson to be a household name in fantasy football because he's going to be the RB1 for the Rams. And I think he is going to step up and have a phenomenal season.
You heard it here.
Yep, absolutely. And I mean, in case you guys are keeping score at home, a lot of things that are said on this show tend to happen in real life. So
yeah, just ask Pat McAfee.
Yeah, I'm sure he'll be dropping Darrell Henderson references in the next day or two.
But yeah, I definitely agree that the Rams are probably the better team there in a very good division. They also have the added bonus of having a great defense. They've got stars all over that everybody knows their names. The Aaron Donalds, the
Jalen Ramsey.
Yeah, Jalen Ramsey. So yeah, I mean, that's another added bonus for Matt Stafford. He doesn't necessarily have to throw 900 touchdowns a game to win. His defense can keep the other team in check and potentially, keep the opposing offense from scoring, so he doesn't have to do a whole hell of a lot.
And that plays into my Darrell Henderson prediction because of the fact that defense isn't going to allow a ton of points every week. I predict that the Rams will be winning a lot of these games late, and they'll just be feeding the rock to try to eat the time. And Henderson's going to be the benefactor of all of that garbage time yardage.
Right. I could see that for sure.
But yeah, the Seahawks, they're a team that could jump up there. We all know how hot Russell Wilson likes to start the season. If he's able to get that going for 10, 12 games this year, maybe only take a quarter of the season or whatever to be the dumpster fire that he ends up being, maybe the Seahawks can make a run at it. DK Metcalf is a freak athlete, and Tyler Lockett is a great wide receiver too, but I think this team also hinges on the running back position. If Chris Carson can stay healthy, then I think this team can go a much further way in their season. If you remember last year, the Seahawks, they started off so hot for 5-6 weeks in a row.
Yep.
When did they start to go off the rails? It's not because Russ stopped playing. It's not because of anything like that. It's because Chris Carson got hurt. Once Carson got hurt, defenses didn't have to respect the run game. They knew the pass was coming, and then they could sit back on their heels a little bit and wait for that. Once Carson got back healthy and got back running the ball again, that's whenever Russ started cooking again later in the season. Their success hinges on Chris Carson.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. And I think that's been kind of the history of Russell Wilson. If he has a good running back behind him, he does well. I mean, Marshawn Lynch is the hugest testament to that. And I think that's just kind of the way that offense is ran. I mean, they've always had, or at least as long as Russell Wilson's been there, they've always had him. Obviously, he can do things with his legs. He can make pretty damn good throws. But if they have to respect a good running back behind him, that just opens it up so much more. And I think when it kind of falls solely on Russell Wilson and the few of his wide receivers, it doesn't pan out so well, because that's a much easier offense to try to contain than one that can beat you in all kinds of different ways.
Yep, I agree. The Cardinals are an interesting one because, they've got a bunch of young studs on offense in Kyler Murray and D-Hop, but they also have some older guys. Like they brought in AJ Green, who also played for the Bengals last year, to kind of fill in that veteran leadership role and all that. They also brought in JJ Watt from the Texans whenever he made his exodus from Houston. And they're kind of piecing together a team of superstars and young guys that Kyler Murray, being still on his rookie contract, is affording them the opportunity to do. they have a very small window because once he's eligible for a contract extension, he's going to break the bank, and then they're not going to be able to give all these contracts out to these other stars. So their window is relatively small. So they're trying to capitalize on that by bringing in these guys, maybe make a run at a championship. Do you think they have enough firepower there in Arizona to compete with some of these other teams?
I do not.
Okay.
I don't think the veteran additions are going to move the needle enough to make a splash. JJ Watt is a great player, but he is aged for a NFL player, especially a defensive lineman. You're talking about a guy who has had a lot of injuries throughout his career, which is to be expected. That's a extremely tough position to play. At this point in his career, I just don't think he's gonna, he's not gonna be that guy that he was for the Texans years ago, where he's in on the pass rush, he's getting sacks. Oh, and he's also, lined up on the goal line to catch a touchdown. That's just not in the cards. Like you said, AJ Green, he's been hurt damn near all of his career playing up there in Cincinnati. Doesn't move the needle. I think D-Hop and Kyler Murray are definitely very good players and definitely up there in the wide receiver quarterback duo kind of thing. But I just don't think it's enough. And I completely agree. They have a very short window before Kyler Murray wants some humongous contract that they won't be able to afford, because I'm pretty sure that Arizona team is a ridiculously small market. So it's going to be tough. It's going to be very tough for them. I do not have high hopes for that team to make any kind of run. Could they make the playoffs on maybe a wild card? It's possible. They're going to have a really good year, though.
Yeah, and the other team in the division that is looking to have that really good year and a bounce back season is the San Francisco 49ers. This is a team that I feel like they all have revenge on their minds because of last season. Last season, just think about it. They were kicked out of their home stadium. They were all hurt. Basically, the entire starting lineup of the 49ers was injured for a majority of the season. Now they're all back. This is a team that in 2019 made it to the Super Bowl. Jimmy Garoppolo led this team to a Super Bowl. They also got the number 3 overall pick in Trey Lance. So there's a quarterback battle, but I don't think there's really as much of a battle as they're letting on.
I don't either.
I think Jimmy G is going to have the ball until Trey Lance is ready. And this is a team that, like I said, they've got revenge on their brain. They know that they're capable of being a Super Bowl caliber team. They're going to go out there and try to shut some people up.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. And I think if everything clicks this year, then they're right back to being a dangerous team. They have one of the best tight ends in George Kittle.
Yep.
And I do agree with the Jimmy G situation. He's a good player. I mean, he's not maybe a superstar caliber type quarterback, but he's definitely solid for them. And I think this Trey Lance pickup I think it was a weird pickup in and of itself, but this might just be, we want to see what this guy has to offer. Scouts are kind of interesting in how they pick up subtle little things in players that they like and that they think that might fit into their system. So this might just be a pickup and who knows what's going to happen. But I definitely think that they're a force to be reckoned with this year. Could they potentially go back to the Super Bowl? It's all up in the air, but I definitely think that they're going to have at least a winning season for sure.
If you had to say who you think is going to win the NFC West today, 2 weeks before the season kicks off, who would you pick?
Rams.
I'm with you on that one. I think the Rams have the best overall team, and the addition to Stafford, I'm super high on.
Yeah, I think if the Rams didn't have such a good defense, it would be a little bit more up in the air. But I don't think there's a team out there in the NFC West that has a defense anywhere close to theirs. So that's what gives them the definitive edge.
That's the edge, yeah. But the NFC West is by far the best division in the entire NFC, if not the entire NFL. So if there's a best, then that means there has to be a worst. And that would be the NFC least. NFC East, of course, is the worst division out there in the NFC, probably in the entire NFL. And the Washington football team are the reigning division champions. Of course, they went out and they played against the Bucs in the playoffs, and they put up a good effort, but ultimately fell short. So what did they do? They promptly turned around and got rid of 2/3 of the quarterbacks that got them there for the season. They got rid of Alex Smith. They got rid of Dwayne Haskins, and they brought in Ryan Fitzpatrick, who missed out on making it to the playoffs barely with the Dolphins last year when he was splitting time with Tua. They do have an elite defense with a pretty solid offense. I think some of the offensive weapons that they have kind of go under the radar with Antonio Gibson and Terry McLaurin. Some of those guys, they are talented, skill players on the offensive side of the ball that don't really get a lot of the credit they deserve because they play for Washington. Do you think this is a team that can repeat as division champs, or are they going to be surpassed by one of these other NFC East franchises?
I think the NFC East is Washington's to lose. And if they're going to lose to somebody, it'll probably be the Cowboys if that offense can get going, because they have a lot of talent on that offense. But I do think overall, as a whole, the Washington football team has a much better team than as a whole than any other team in the NFC East. Ryan Fitzpatrick is an interesting pickup for me. Sure, he's a veteran. He knows what he's doing. He's been to every damn team in the whole league. But, I mean, he's never been the guy. He's always been, we've got him as a backup for this new young kid, or, oh, he made a splash because somebody got hurt and now he's doing really great. So I don't know if he can do much more than win that division.
Yeah, no, I agree. To me, it is worth noting that the Washington football team are the only team in that division that's actually won a preseason game so far. I don't know if that means anything to you or to any of our listeners, but they are the only one with a win.
That is so fitting for that division.
You mentioned the Dallas Cowboys, Zach, and of course, before their season even gets started, we've got the usual fanfare and the group of people that are promising that this is their year. But report after report after report has been coming in that Dak just isn't healthy yet. Of course, he's coming off of that horrific ankle injury and the surgery and all the rehab and all the stuff that comes along with it. But now it appears that Dak has injured his shoulder.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe he tore a rotator cuff or threw it out or something whenever he was signing that massive contract. But something is not right with Dak Prescott. And you mentioned their offense. If Dak isn't on the field and Dak isn't playing at 100%, then that offense isn't going to be clicking at 100% either.
And even if he was terrible, they don't have the backup of an Andy Dalton. I don't even know who their backup is. So it's going to all fall apart if Dak is not healthy. And I think it's not going to be the same if he has to deal with something. I mean, he might be on the field, but I think if he's dealing with some sort of injury and playing through it, he's not going to be able to perform the same way. He's another one of those guys that makes his money on his ability to move around in the pocket, make plays happen, extend plays, let his very good wide receiver core get open. And if he can't do that stuff, if he can't throw accurately with a shoulder injury, that offense is going to crumble. And that's the huge question mark. And that's something that's kind of come to light recently, is this issue with Dak's shoulder, because, a couple of weeks ago, everyone was excited for him to come back. He looked great in his time and his practices, but now we're hearing about this, and it's not good for that team.
Yeah, and you mentioned that offense there. They do have one of the most prolific offenses in the NFL if they're all healthy. Zeke can be a top 10, top 5 running back in the NFL. You've got Cooper, CeeDee Lamb. Those guys are phenomenal wide receivers, probably among the best 1-2 punches out there. A lot of this is just going to hinge on the health of Dak Prescott. And you hate that their season hinges on a guy who's coming back off of a season-ending injury. But this is the situation that the Cowboys have put themselves in because of their willingness to hand out mega deals to all these players.
I couldn't agree more. This is Jerry Jones's burden to bear. If he was – able to put some money elsewhere, maybe they could have had a little bit better of a team as a whole instead of just 4 or 5 mega paid superstars. And then if those guys go down, you're just screwed. So I think that was just bad management on Jerry Jones's part, but it wasn't up to me. No one asked me my opinion. So this is just what they have to deal with now.
They should ask our opinions, I think.
I would love to give mine.
Now, we talked about the Dak injury. Another team that's hoping that one of their studs can come back off of injury and return to his rookie season form, of course, is the New York Football Giants. This is a team that they've basically mortgaged their entire future on the hopes that Saquon Barkley will come back and be the stud running back that they all thought that he was, and he was for his rookie season when he was drafted out of Penn State. What do you think about Saquon? What do you think of his chances to come back and be that premier running back once again?
Boy, I think he'll probably most likely be all right. But that kind of then tells me, okay, if the defenses that he's going to be facing know that he is basically their number one threat, what's stopping them from just completely shutting him down? I mean, is Daniel Jones going to be able to light the world on fire with his arm? Probably not. So even if Saquon Barkley is ready to go and ready to crush it this year, who's to say that those defenses aren't completely ready to just stop him right in his tracks? Because they basically know that that's the only thing that the Giants have to go off of.
Yep. I couldn't agree more. I don't think Daniel Jones is really scaring anything or anyone. So if Barkley's not able to come back and return to form, then it's going to be another miserable season for the G-men. The Eagles, their Super Bowl run from a few years ago seems like a very distant memory at this point. This is a team that currently doesn't really have too much hope to be very successful. And with their current quarterback situation, ahead of his most recent preseason game, Jalen Hurts ended up not playing. He was a late scratch ahead of the preseason game against the New England Patriots. It turns out that maybe he wasn't injured or anything. He was just kind of sick. It wasn't COVID related, so maybe he had the flu or food poisoning or something. But without him, that offense definitely did not look good, and it did not prompt any kind of spark in the Eagles offense. What do you think about the Eagles and their chances to win this division this year, Zach?
Almost none. You mentioned the quarterback woes. Jalen Hurts doesn't seem like he's going to be, the guy this year, which again, he might be having that Matt Stafford kind of syndrome where he's a victim of being on a bad team. But I completely agree. The fact that they won a Super Bowl not too long ago is almost hard to believe. Nick Foles is obviously long gone. Carson Wentz is long gone. So this is a team that's probably in the midst of a rebuild. They just don't know it yet. So yeah, I don't expect them to be doing a whole hell of a lot.
No. And I mentioned that preseason game that Jalen Hurts was a late scratch for. They ended up getting crushed 35-0 by our New England Patriots.
There you go.
And it's so fitting that Jim's on here now, and we appreciate the love that he's showing, tagging all of his friends and his members of his group. Now that we can actually talk about the New England Patriots as our team, Zach. And there's been quite a bit going on in New England lately.
It has there.
The quarterback battle that we've been talking about all offseason and pretty much ever since the draft of Mac Jones. Josh McDaniels came out earlier this week, seemingly confirmed that they're going to stick with Cam Newton. Bill Belichick has made some recent quotes in his press conference alluding to the fact that Cam is still going to be the guy going forward. The team's not moving on from him and all that. But then the news broke today that Cam is going to be forced to miss 5 games, or I'm sorry, 5 days per the NFL and NFL Player Association protocol due to a misunderstanding about tests conducted away from NFL facilities. Essentially what happened was Cam was sent away by the Patriots. They organized him to go out of town to a medical facility where he was tested every single day that he was gone. Every test came back a negative. When he came back to the New England Patriots, they said, you've got to wait 5 days, make sure that you're good to go. You got to kind of quarantine yourself before we let you back into the bubble. This seems like it's a little bit weird, and I hate to make another excuse for Cam, but it kind of seems like he's getting screwed here.
He's absolutely getting screwed. I heard Adam Schefter say that if Cam were vaccinated, he wouldn't have had to worry about this, but that's neither here nor there. This seems like a huge misstep by somebody. I mean, somebody should have seen this coming, because they let him leave the New England area to go to some sort of medical appointment or whatever. How did someone not say, oh, hold up, let's check the COVID protocols and see what we need to do if this ends up happening? Oh, okay. If you leave, we're going to have to do such and such. So maybe you just want to take that and go for it. Maybe not. And they could have then made that decision. But for them to just be blindsided by this is kind of ridiculous. And I completely agree. I think this is screwing Cam over. I don't think it'll ultimately affect his week 1 starting status, but I mean, it just screws him over in the idea that he misses that many days of practice. He doesn't get to play against a scrimmage, and it gives Mac Jones all that more time on the field, which is definitely good for him. But it's just such a weird situation with Cam.
It is a weird situation, and I don't think that the Patriots did anything to try to sabotage Cam Newton. I don't think that Bill was sitting there in the boardroom and leaned in to talk with Josh McDaniel and Matt Patricia and says, so how can we do it so that it looks like it's his fault? Right. I don't think there's any kind of conspiracy going on, but boy, does Twitter think that there's something fishy going on here. They think that there is going to be some sort of, tinfoil hat conspiracy coming out of all this.
Sure.
I'm not so sure that I buy that, but it definitely does suck for Cam Newton. And it does seem like this is the type of thing that the Patriots should have caught prior to setting up the trip. Maybe they thought, since they were the organization themselves were setting up this medical treatment outside of the area, that they thought that it would be good because he was still under team control where he was at. He just wasn't in the facility. I don't know, but it sucks. It almost seems like you can throw Cam Newton in this list of quarterbacks that are unlucky. Guys like Tyrod Taylor, guys like Teddy Bridgewater, and now Cam Newton. These guys are some of the unluckiest guys because of the weird, zany stuff that always seems to happen to them outside of football.
Yep. I couldn't agree more. That's a top 3 most unlucky quarterbacks. That's a pretty solid pick right there. I mean, those guys have great talent among them. And for whatever reason, it just never seems to work out. I mean, Tyrod Taylor has been bounced around, and last year was supposed to be the year that he was the guy for the Chargers. Then they stick his lung with a freaking needle. I mean, apparently that happens X amount of times whenever you get a shot like that. But I mean, whatever. It's just so weird. All these little things that happen. And you mentioned Teddy Bridgewater. He's bounced around a lot. He was supposed to be the guy for all these different teams. Never happens. He did great in Minnesota there for a while. It sucks to see these guys that are extremely talented that just can never really make a home and make anything happen.
He went undefeated in New Orleans whenever he was filling in for Drew Brees, became the guy supposedly in Carolina. They've moved on from him. Now he's in Denver in a quarterback battle with Drew Lock. Ugh. Like, this dude's had a horrible string of luck just everywhere he goes. And it seems like Cam Newton's in that same vein. Will he go on to another team? Who knows? But I do think ultimately he will be replaced by Mac Jones before the season is over. I don't think that, like you said, that it'll impact week 1. I think it'll still be Cam's team. But these next 5 days are going to be very important for the development of Mac Jones, because in practice, in team meetings, in the locker room, this is Mac's team right now. Yeah. He's the guy right now. And the way that he handles himself and the way that he conducts business will go a long way in impressing Bill and Josh and all of the offensive coaches, and how he's going to be not just next year, not just 2 years from now, but in the next 5-10 years from now. These next 5 days are very important to his career and his life. Regardless of who's playing quarterback in the preseason game last Thursday, that they were dominant against the Eagles. Like we said earlier, they 35-0 over the Birds. The Pats were able to move the ball and score at will. But one of the most important things that I noticed in that preseason game was that the running attack looks phenomenal once again, and I'm all for it. I'm all for watching James White and Damian Harris and Sony Michel and Stevenson just pile up the touchdowns. Be it that it's in preseason, doesn't really matter to me. I love seeing that the running game is back. This is something that I've been talking about for a couple of years now, is that this team is built to run the football.
Right.
Even when they had Tom Brady, I was saying this is a running team, but they happen to have a quarterback that's the greatest of all time, so they're going to throw the ball a lot. This is a running team, and there's no better way to bring a young quarterback along than to have a solid run game, because that's going to take so much pressure off of a young quarterback. So this is the perfect storm for somebody like Mac Jones. The only problem that I see with it is, as a fantasy player, what do you do with the New England running back situation?
I would probably stay away from it as a fantasy player, honestly, because they do have, 3 guys that they like to split relatively evenly. Neither of them really fit in a flex position. And I mean, it's great for the Patriots fans. But yeah, like you said, as a fantasy, I don't know that you might not want to pick up one of those guys, but I mean, it's awesome that they have several different players that they can plug in, and they don't have to have, a workhorse that just gets gassed and then they're kind of screwed. They can definitely plug and play those guys, and they all do pretty well.
Yeah, Bill Belichick's also one of those guys that's known for riding the hot hand, and it could be Michelle one week that racks up 150 yards with 3 touchdowns, and then the next week he only gets 2 carries because James White is lighting it up, or maybe they've got a good pass attack going that day, and Aguilar catches 2 touchdowns or something like that.
Right.
Who knows?
Yep.
But it is one of those things. The Patriots for a long time have been one of those teams that you want to avoid in fantasy. I think that trend continues this year. Maybe you can pick up a wide receiver or a tight end as a late round pick, but I wouldn't put all of my eggs into those baskets.
Yeah, completely agree. And just like you said, Bill Belichick will find some random player and he'll pop off one week, and no one will ever know it. He'll be on the waiver wire just sitting there, and he'll throw up some crazy points, and then you probably won't hear about him for a while.
How many times did Rex Burkhead have a 30-point game sitting on somebody's bench or the waiver wire?
Right.
A lot. Let's jump into some MLB real quick before we run out of time this week. We wanted to talk a little bit about the power rankings. Of course, MLB drops theirs weekly, and we like to come on here every now and then and just touch base and give you our power rankings for how we see it. And we disagree a little bit with the official MLB rankings because they have the Dodgers at number 1. But Zach, you and I talked pre-show, and we both agree that the Giants should be that number 1 team in the power rankings, based solely on the fact that they're the number 1 team in the Dodgers division. They're also the first team to 80 wins in Major League Baseball, and they've led that division all season long. So for them to get bumped out of the number 1 power spot just because the Dodgers have a bigger payroll seems a little bit screwy to me. What do you think?
I couldn't have said it better myself. The Giants have been the best team in the National League, if not all of MLB, let alone the best team in the NL West. This is an absolute no-brainer. No one saw this coming, so it's not like they're simply living up to expectations. Everyone thought that the Dodgers were going to win this division relatively easily. We've hardly ever talked about the Giants putting up this big of a fight. I mean, like you said, they've been the number 1 team for their division for, I'm pretty sure, the whole year, if not like the vast majority of it. No brainer, number 1 team. These guys are the real deal. They've been doing this for a long time now. They haven't slowed down. It's kind of crazy, but yeah, this is an absolute easy pick for number 1.
That being said, I still think the Dodgers are going to win the division. I think they're going to overtake them in the last month of the season. But we've been saying all along that the wild cards for the National League are all going to come out of the West. This week, we saw the San Diego Padres knocked out of the wild card by a team from the Central, the Cincinnati Reds, who have been another surprise team this season.
Yep.
So it's going to be interesting going down the stretch to see who actually makes it out of the National League. But going back to our power rankings, we do have the Dodgers at number 2. They could end up being number 1 by the end of the week, even if they are able to string together some more wins and the Giants are, starting to slow down just a little bit. Third, we have the Tampa Bay Rays. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's the Tom Brady effect there in Tampa, but since he got to town, those teams just don't lose. Fourth, we have the Houston Astros, and fifth, the Milwaukee Brewers have snuck their way up into the top 5. What do you think about that list right there, Zach?
I completely agree with it. The Rays are surging, and they have been for a while now. They're another one that there was kind of a shocker. I mean, they've lost 2 of their very good pitchers, one to a trade and the other to a injury. I kind of thought that would affect them a little bit. Hasn't seemed to really do a whole heck of a lot. So they're very surprising that they're doing as well as they are, but they have a good team all around. It's kind of wild. And then obviously the Astros, they're another team that a lot of people aren't really talking about simply because they probably have a little bit of a stigma still attached to them from the cheating scandal. And the Brewers, the heartbreak of any Cardinal fan out there. This team surged when the Cardinals were falling. Obviously, the Cubs just sold off everything, and the Reds are another one of those crazy out of nowhere teams that surged. And other than Nick Castellanos and what's the other guy? Nick Wright, is that his name? No, what's the other outfielder for them? Jeez,
Wendell.
Is it
Wendell, Jesse Winker.
Winker, there it is.
There it is. I knew it would come to me eventually.
Dug it out of there.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not like they have a dominant bullpen. They have 1 or 2 good starters. They're just a wild team.
They're
Joey Votto,
together,
Joey Votto, the old fart, has been having an amazing season. And the Brewers, I mean, what can you say? They have amazing pitching across the board. I mean, they have Corbin Burns. They have Brandon Woodruff as starters. Those dudes are lights out. Obviously, at the back end, Josh Hader is probably one of the best closers out there. They have a very good pitching staff, and I think that's where their success is coming from. Pitching is keeping those games easy to win for those offenses, and here they are. They're a product of the rest of the NFL or the NL Central not doing so great this year, and that's basically thrown them into this spot. But I mean, you can't knock them.
Nope, absolutely not. And in about a month's time, I'll be there watching the Brewers and your Cardinals play.
I still think that'll be a fun game to watch, but it won't be the race for the division like you thought it was going to be.
Unfortunately, yeah, I thought that I was going to see some September fireworks in that one, but you know what? It's still a good baseball game to go to, and it's still going to be a lot of fun. We mentioned again pre-show that the Braves and the Yankees have a 2-game series starting tonight. Both teams are riding a 9-game win streak, and they've both positioned themselves squarely in the hunt for postseason. This is going to be a pretty big series to keep an eye on. And as mentioned earlier in the episode, the New Orleans Saints are playing on Monday Night Football, so you can tune in and get a glimpse at what Jameis Winston-led Saints offense is going to look like. So what are you excited for tonight, Zach?
I'm definitely excited to see who can do what with their quarterbacks in that NFL preseason game. That'll be pretty interesting. I think the Yankees are probably the better team out of the Yankees and Braves. I think that the Braves are capitalizing on the fact that their division is terrible. I mean, all things considered. I am shocked that they're on such a win streak after losing Ozuna and Acuna. They've been able to somehow piece it back together. I mean, they had a terrible first half of the season for the talent that they have on that team. And I guess they're finally picking up the pieces and doing something here. So they probably will, unless the Mets rise up again, they probably will win this division. I mean, they were our favorites to win anyway. So they're just kind of picking up where they should have been 2-3 months ago.
Yep. I agree. I think the Braves, they should win that division now. They've kind of moved ahead. They've gotten a little bit more confidence in how they're playing and a little bit more swagger at the plate. The pitching has come a long, long way from what it was a few weeks ago. So it's their division to lose now. And tonight, I am excited to see the Saints, see what they do with that quarterback situation, see how Winston looks with the ones. And of course, they are playing against the Jacksonville Jags. So, got to cheer on the hometown team, if you will.
Are they going to trot Trevor Lawrence out tonight?
Oh yeah, Trevor Lawrence will go out and play. The second preseason game is where you're going to see the majority of these starters go out and play the bulk of time. I think week 3 you're going to see a lot more guys resting.
Sure.
So this will be the bulk. The most that you're going to see Trevor Lawrence in the preseason will be tonight.
Yeah, I could see that. And I think the world will be watching and seeing what Trevor Lawrence has to offer. I doubt he'll play a whole hell of a lot, but I mean, it'll be basically the first glimpse of how he handles the NFL, how he handles his new team. So could be interesting.
We've got Wallow saying that we should do a Monday Night Football companion, the Jags versus the Saints, starting now. I don't know if anybody wants to listen to us bump our gums for the next 3.5 hours or so there, Wallow, but I'm glad that you do, and I'm glad that you would tune in for it. Maybe if you can rally some support and get like 100 new likes on our Facebook page or something like that, maybe we'll consider it. So you can get to work on that, and we'll see what happens. But in the meantime, we hope everybody enjoyed this episode. We hope that you go out and like and subscribe to the Nest Podcast and listen to full episodes wherever you like to listen to podcasts. We're also streaming now on Twitch?
Yes,
we moved to. So yeah, if you have a Twitch channel, go out and watch on there or whatever. I don't even know how Twitch works. That's up your alley, not mine. But yeah, so go ahead, hit that like, subscribe button, share it, tell a friend, help us out, and we'll see you guys next week. Peace.